popular is crowdfunding using euros? Is it different than using dollars in the US? If you're a polyglot, trilingual, is it easier or tougher to find a job that puts that skill to use? How important is networking? You got your PhD, but what do you do with it when you move to a new country? Is the career track different? But first, how much do Americans put aside for retirement? What about the French? Do they put aside less or more? This is the Language of Business Visit to France, sponsored by Morse, Barnes, Brown, and Pendleton, providing corporate IP and litigation representation in Boston, Cambridge, and Waltham. Here's the host, Greg Stoller.
How much is enough money to save for retirement? And is that amount going to be the same between the US and Europe? We're on location here in Angers, France with Bruno Séjourné, who's the director of SAMAP. Welcome to the Language of Business.
Hi, Greg.
You've spent over 20 years researching household savings. Is the household savings rate in France high or low?
Yes, it's a high rate, and it's been a high rate since more than 25 years now, around 15%, which is quite a high level when compared to the other European countries, and of course when compared to the US. This high saving rate gave rise to the financial wealth, on the global wealth of households. Today we can say that household wealth is something like twice the GDP, or in other words we can say it represents 9 years of income of households, which is a high level.
And is the household savings rate so high because of the pension system in France?
Not really. It's always been high for different reasons, but mainly when we look at the different data, we can say that there are two main reasons. The first one is precautionary saving. Okay, people are still afraid about the short-term future, what can happen to them, and also because they plan to invest in the long run for real estate. And the third, in third position, we have the problem of retirement, which is quite new in France because, as you know, we have a public system of pay-as-you-go retirement.
And what is the current retirement age in France? I know that it's changed.
It's been increasing a little bit during the last years because of the different reforms that we had since 1993. So now it's around 60 years.
Why do you think that most people invest in real estate as opposed to the stock market?
This is a complicated question, but in France we've always had this preference for real estate. A long time ago, in the 70s, that was because of the high inflation rate, and real estate was supposed to be a good protection against inflation. And then this is also because real estate is supposed to create jobs, and then there was always a support by public authorities in favor of investment in housing. So people have always been very aware of what can happen in that direction.
And when you say people are investing in real estate, is it for their own homes or is it for real estate for investment?
Mainly for their own homes, but there is, if you look at the people at the highest level of wealth, of course they also invest in real estate for different purposes, and many purposes in fact.
If college is comparatively free in France and throughout the EU, why are people so worried about money?
I think we don't trust in France, we don't trust in the future just like you do in the US. That's a kind of spirit difference. But in fact, I think that we all know that we've been living under a high protection by the state, and this is changing a little bit. So people do not know what's going to happen. The first reason for that is just because we have a high unemployment rate, and this, as I said before, can be linked with the precautionary saving motive, and then because we know that we're going to have to change our habits concerning retirement, and people start saving now for retirement also.
Do you think the younger generation is going to save more or less than our generation?
Well, what we can say is that they start saving earlier for retirement. Okay, the generation of the baby boom, as we said, started saving for retirement very late in their life cycle, and this is not the case for the young. They know that they will have to do something to prepare for their retirement, and they start earlier. But for this they need to have a good job, and they need to start in their life, and this is quite difficult for young people.
Do you personally think right now you have enough money for retirement?
As a civil servant, I can think that I have a good chance for that. But most of the reforms in France have been focused on moving the parameters of our system to make it sure and to make it safe. So people know that years after years, some of them know that they will have difficulties, but that's not the case for everybody. For example, that's not the case for civil servants most of the time.
Bruno, thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg.
Bruno Sejourné, the director of SAMAP here in Angers, France.
Coming up, if you're a polyglot, trilingual, is it easier or tougher to find a job that puts that skill to use? And how important is networking? You got your PhD, but what do you do with it when you move to a new country? Is the career track different? But first, how popular is crowdfunding using euros? Is it different than using dollars in the US? When the Language of Business visit to France continues. You're watching the Language of Business visit to France. Once again, Greg Stoller.
Is crowdfunding the same in Europe as it is in the United States? We're on location here in Angers, France, about 3 hours outside of Paris and in the heart of the Loire Valley. Deffains-Crapsky is an expert in crowdfunding, and welcome to the Language of Business.
Thank you for the invitation.
How popular is crowdfunding in France?
It's very popular. We have around more than 2 million people who have already funded companies, associations, or cultural projects, artistical projects on a crowdfunding platform.
Does crowdfunding use the internet as much as it does in France as it is in the United States?
Yes, crowdfunding it's only on internet. So the principle is very simple. An internet platform puts some projects on internet with a description of the project, and everybody can have a look at the project, and then they can decide to give some money to fund this project. So we have different models, of course, and some models are much more complicated than what I've just said, but the principle is very simple.
What is the average amount of euros that is funded for crowdfunding?
It depends on the model. So if it's only donation or reward-based, the average amount is around 20 euros. But if you speak about crowd investing, so equity crowdfunding, so on this platform you fund a startup, the average amount is around 4,000 euros per person.
And which do you think has a higher probability for success?
So we have crowd equity, crowd lending, and reward based. In France now, the biggest model is crowd lending, but crowd equity is increasing very fast, and it is due to our legal system.
And does crowd lending indicate that the money will be paid back over time?
At the moment, yes, the money is paid back, but perhaps it won't last very long, we don't know. But at the moment we have no problem with crowd lending, but as far as we have more and more platforms, I guess we might have some problems with some bankrupts or some companies who can have problems, yeah.
And why do you think that crowd equity funding has become so popular?
Why? Because we have much more entrepreneurs now in France, and I would say in Europe. So when you create your company, you need money, and you need also to be a company. And so as far as we have more and more startups, we are more and more innovative, we need money. And the other reason is that we have implemented a special legal system for crowd lending and crowd equity, which is a very flexible legal system, and so this is why it's so popular. And it's we have a regulation, of course. We have the financial authority which looks after all this, but it's very simple to invest on this platform. It's easy to put a project on this platform. For people, it's easy to invest. And now we have more and more professional business angels, venture capitalists who are working with this platform. So we can fund more and more startups with crowd equity.
And are these laws only for France or for the entire European Union?
No, we don't have a European legal system for crowd lending and crowd equity. We don't. Each country has its own legal system. In France, it is the most flexible for all Europe. Some other countries have a special legal system, Spain, Italy, Germany, UK. But perhaps the European Union will decide to harmonize all the systems. So we will see if they do it. At the moment, it doesn't exist.
Which country in Europe has the most crowdfunding investing so far?
UK, of course. UK, and after in continental Europe, it's France and Germany. We are closed.
Catherine, thank you.
Thank you.
Deffains-Crapsky, an expert in crowdfunding on location here in France.
Still ahead, you got your PhD. What do you do with it when you move to a new country? Is the career track different? But first, if you're a polyglot, trilingual, is it easier or tougher to find a job that puts that skill to use? And how important is networking as the language of business visit to France continues?
You finish your master's program in France, what happens next? We're on location in Angers, 3 hours outside of Paris, with Louis-Matar, and welcome to the Language of Business.
Thank you.
You are currently in a master's program in financial controls.
Yeah, exactly.
What are you going to do after you graduate?
After I graduate, for the moment I don't know yet, but I have this idea to work as a compliance officer in a bank, because I know they are looking for experts in this area because of the evolution of the legislation. So for the moment it's my principal idea.
And why did you choose the University of Angers?
I chose this university because I've stopped my studies and I worked as a temporary worker for 2 years, and after that I had to choose a master program, and I discovered this program on internet and it looked really good, and after that I passed the interview here and it worked well, so that's why I've chosen this program.
And when will you be graduating?
Normally at the end of the year, at the end of the academic year, so it means in next September.
And how long does it usually take to get a job in France?
In France, to tell you the truth, I don't know, because for the moment I'm still a student, but I think normally it takes between, I don't know, if you are lucky, between 2 months or 6 months, and if you find a good internship and you are doing well in your company, maybe you can have the chance to stay there and to work for them. So maybe it can take less than 3 months.
So will you be doing an internship while you're still a student?
Yeah, exactly. I'm going to do my internship in next April. I will start in April.
And will you be paid or unpaid for the internship?
It depends. If I do my internship in France, if you do more than 3 months, it's mandatory to be paid. But if I'm doing my internship overseas, it depends on the legislation of the country.
What do you think is the average amount of time you will stay in your first job?
I don't know yet, but I hope to find a company when I'm feeling good and to stay, and I imagine not to do my entire career, but at least to have some experiences before get a new job. So for the moment I cannot tell you.
And how far is your home from the University of Angers?
My hometown is not, it's just 1 hour from here.
And do you care whether you get a job near Nantes or Angers, or perhaps on the other side of France?
To tell you the truth, I don't care, because I just want to have a job, and if it's in Nantes, it will be perfect, but I know the reality, so I think I will have to go, maybe not overseas, but at least in Paris, to find a job that I like.
How important are connections in France when looking for a job?
Are you talking about network?
Yes.
Yeah, I think it's the most important things.
And are you a fan of LinkedIn, Facebook, or Twitter, or are there other more francophile type networks that you use?
I have to tell you that I'm not the social network guy, but to find a job, I think you must be on this social network and try to give a good image and try to be recruited through this social network.
And you speak French, English, and Spanish.
Yeah, I'm trying to speak English. I don't know if I speak English.
You're doing terrifically well. Do you ever perhaps want to work in Spain?
In Spain, I don't know, because I know that there are not a lot of jobs for Spanish people.
Yeah, the economy is very challenging right now.
Yeah.
But if there were, would you want to work in Spain or in another Spanish-speaking country?
I would like to go in South America at the beginning for discover the continent, and after that try to get a job there. Why not?
What do you think is going to be more important for you with your first job? The title, the salary, or something else?
Definitely the salary. I think we work to I don't know how to say that, but I think it's the most important things for me.
Louis-Matar, thank you.
Thank you, great.
Louis-Matar Gay, a master's student here at the University of Angers.
Coming up, you got your PhD. What do you do with it when you move to a new country? Is the career track different? When the Language of Business visit to France continues. You're watching the Language of Business visit to France. Once again, Greg Stoller.
After you get your PhD in France, what is the typical track? Is it different than the United States, or perhaps the same? We're on location in France with Abdel-Malik Ola. He is a PhD student in management in Granem at the University of Angers, originally from Togo. Welcome to the Language of Business.
Thank you, Greg.
How long have you been in France?
In France since 6 years. So I have started with my master's. So now in PhD, I'm trying to finish my PhD, which will be defended in the next December.
And why did you come to France from Togo?
First of all, is for my PhD. So I have the opportunity to come and make something like a good PhD in this country, because it's not the same thing in my country. So it's also the opportunity for me to see other things in my life, and it was a life choice.
And what will you do after you graduate?
After my PhD in France, I will try to get a professor or post in France, and why not to stay here if all the conditions are met.
And what aspect of management are you studying?
So I'm more specialized in financing, entrepreneurial finance, especially in how come to identify investment opportunity in entrepreneurial ecosystem.
And how do you go about finding a job in France?
Finding a job is a good question. First, in the French system, you have, after a PhD, you have to a kind of how can I say it, concours?
An open house of sorts.
Yes.
Right.
So if everything is going very good, all right, I can have a post of professor at the next year in one of the university in France.
And do you care whether you're in a big city or small city?
I have not have like aim to be in a good or small city. For me, the most important point will be to be in a good context, when research can be made in a good research can be made. So I will give importance to research groups which have mean and money and the opportunity to give me the opportunity to be in contact with actors, business angel, and manager to do my research.
And when you do your research and publish it, what language do you publish it in?
In French and English. Now we are encouraged to publish in English, so the trend now is to make some English publications.
If you had to go through it all again, would you have opted to get your PhD in France or in another country?
Perhaps I will prefer to be in an English context because it will be more easy to evolve in such a context. And today, for example, to make a kind of publication in English is very difficult when you have making your scholar process in French context. So if I can go back 3 years ago, I will prefer to be in English context. Yes.
And how often do you return to your family in Togo?
One time since I'm in France, so 3 years ago. So for my defense, perhaps they will come and see and share some time with me for my defense. Yes.
Would you ever want to become a French citizen?
Yes. It will be a good thing because when I leave my country, I was 6 years ago, not very open. Down here, I have learned how to have a good life here, and I would like to stay there for the rest of my
career?
Professional
right.
career. Yes.
And if you had to rank the French economy right now on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being horrible and 10 being perfect,
yes.
What rank would you give it?
7.
And do you think that will continue over the next 3 to 5 years?
For the next year, I think this economy will be more, will develop positively because things are changing, and young people are more involved in how we can say opportunity and entrepreneurial system. So it will be better for the life to have more young, vibrant economics.
Abdel-Malik, thank you.
Thank you, Gregos.
Abdel-Malik Ola, a PhD student in Grantham here in management in Angers, France.
Thanks for watching The Language of Business, a weekly look at ways to inspire and inform entrepreneurs. Sponsored by Morse, Barnes Brown, and Pendleton, providing corporate, IP, and litigation representation in Boston, Cambridge, and Waltham. To join the discussion or to watch anytime, go to languageofbusiness.biz.